President Mwai Kibaki. This day, however, the members will be resuming their regular sitting after the long recess that began on the 15th of April. On the order paper this afternoon, what is lined up for debate is that there are about 3 bills that will be read for the first time on the floor of the National Assembly. There is the Kenya Roads Board Amendment Bill originating from the National Assembly, Bill number 13 of 2022, that has been tabled by the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. The principal object of this bill is to amend Section 6 of the Kenya Roads Board Act 2009 to enable the board to manage the Kenya Roads Fund in a manner that allows it to better finance the construction and maintenance of roads. That is a bill that is scheduled on today's afternoon business. The Kenya Roads Board Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 13 of 2022 by the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing, that will be read for the first time on the floor of the House. There is also the Supreme Court Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2022, tabled by the majority party leader. It is a bill that will also be read for the first time on the floor of the House. The purpose of this bill is to amend the Supreme Court Act 2011 in order to align it with the current practices of the court and to improve the court's efficiency in the discharge of its duties. A number of sections of the Act have been declared unconstitutional, and there is need to have the same reflected in the Act. This is according to the author of this bill. Furthermore, the court has recommended amendment to the Act in various cases, such as the Commission on Administrative Justice, among others. It is therefore necessary in these circumstances to update the Supreme Court's governing statute. It is a bill that houses 31 clauses that seeks to propose amendments to this particular bill. It is a bill that is being tabled by the leader of Majority Party, Honorable Amos Kimunya, and it is scheduled to be read for the first time on the floor of the House. Some of the clauses that are proposing amendments to this particular bill or the Act, the Supreme Court Act 2011, is that Clause 2 seeks to amend Section 2 of the Act by deleting the definition of Chief Registrar, amending the definition of court and registrar, and inserting new definitions in the Act with respect to petition, proceedings, preliminary procedures, and precedent. Clause 3 of the bill seeks to amend Section 3, subsection D of the Act to remove the reference to matters relating to the transition from the former constitution to the current one, as these matters will still be catered for even without direct reference. Also lined up to be read for the first time on the floor of the House is the Kenya Revenue Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 24 of 2022, again tabled by the leader of Majority Party. The Kenya Revenue Authority Amendment Bill seeks to amend the Kenya Revenue.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people. We beseech you to behold with your abundant favor as your servants whom you've been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come at our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests we committed to our church. Amen. Honourable members, I'm told we don't have quorum. Can you ring the quorum bell?
Simski na huku like ijoni mtengeneze script.
Can you ring the generator?
Well, Justin Muturi has just ordered that the quorum bell be rung to allow members to get into the chambers. Remember, the House business cannot start before the requisite quorum is achieved. Thereby, the Speaker has ordered for the bell to be rung. It will be rung for 10 minutes to enable members get into the chambers for the business of the day to start. The Supreme Court Amendment Bill, National Assembly, Bill number 15 of 2022, that is tabled by the Leader of Majority Party, Honorable Amos Kimunya, will be read for the first time this afternoon. Some of the amendments that are being proposed to this bill, it is a bill that has 31 clauses. Of justice where necessary. Clause 5 of the bill repeals Section 4 of the Act and substitutes it with a new Section 4 which provides that a vacancy in the Supreme Court shall not affect the jurisdiction of the court as long as the bench has 5 judges. Clause 6 of this particular bill that seeks to amend the Supreme Court Act 2011 in order to align it with the current practice of the court and to improve the court's efficiency in the discharge of its duties is that Clause 6 seeks to amend Section 6, Subsection 2 of the Act to provide that in the absence of the Chief Justice and Deputy Chief Justice, the most senior available judge shall perform any necessary administrative duty. Yes.
Order members, now we have quorum. We can start. Now we have quorum. Yes, start.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
The members could take their seats. These ones who are making their way, are they look there. All our members have two communications. One, a short one, is announcing the Speaker's Kamkunji. As you are aware, during the afternoon sitting of Thursday, 14th April 2022, several members made requests for no members informal meeting, commonly known as the Speaker's Kamkunji, which I acceded to. The meeting was supposed to have happened yesterday, Monday, the 9th of May, but upon request by several members, it was postponed to tomorrow, Wednesday, 11th of May. And therefore, take this opportunity to invite all the members to the Kamukunji tomorrow, Wednesday at 11 a.m. here in the National Assembly chambers upon an earlier adjournment of the House, since it is private members' business day. And the agenda has been circulated by the clerk in the notice to members, and all the members are requested therefore to attend, as there will be in attendance some commissioners, members of the commission from the Senate as well. Honourable members, this is the second communication, and as I welcome you back to the just concluded recess, it's my hope that you've been able to spend valuable time with your families and constituents, notwithstanding the heightened activities that characterize an election year, and are now rejuvenated enough to proceed with the critical business scheduled for the last part of the 6th session of the 12th Parliament before the House proceeds on Synod year recess. Honourable members, I wish to notify the House of two pending matters that were left in abeyance when I adjourned the House under Standing Order 112, which relates to grave disorder in the House for the long recess on the 14th of April 2022. Ordinarily, honourable members, a House of Parliament is typically calm and operates in a friendly atmosphere in the weeks leading to a Synod year adjournment. I'm certain most of our members will recall the regrettable and chaotic scenes that were witnessed in this House on the 14th of April, involving the members of Wajir County and Embakasi East, the Honourable Fatuma Gedi, MP, and the Honourable Babu Owino, MP, which were in complete contrast to the norm and expectation. Honourable members, in the case of the member for Wajir County, the Honourable Fatuma Gedi, my guidance was clear to the fact that all she was required to do at the time was to table documents regarding the allegations that she had made on the floor of the House on 12th of April 2022 in accordance with the requirements of Standing Order number 91. You'll also recall that during the said sitting, I also did guide the House on what is the established practice and procedure of the House in considering the admissibility and or authenticity or otherwise of a document tabled in the House, and made reference to the Speaker's guidelines in a number of cases that occurred in the 10th Parliament. In a nutshell, just to refresh the minds of honourable members, in considering the admissibility and or authenticity or otherwise of a document tabled in the House, the Speaker examines the document. One, to determine the following. One, whether the document relates to the matter for which it has been tabled. Two, whether it is signed, and if it is, a government document by the authorized person or persons. 3, bears the emblem or logo of the institution stroke person from which it originated or coat of arms in the case of documents from government agencies. 4, clearly indicates the author and the person to whom it is addressed. 5, discloses the origin or source of the document. 6, bears certification where a document other than the original is being tabled. 7, if electronic, whether it has been obtained from a source that does not permit alteration of contents. It is a matter dealing with the rule of admission of electronic evidence. 8, whether it is related to a claim made before the House or a committee of its content, whether it has a nexus with a claim. And finally, number 9, whether it is stamped and clearly indicates the person signing off the stamp. Honourable members, what I've just highlighted is what I would call the basic rules of determining the admissibility and or authenticity or otherwise of a document tabled in the House. Any document tabled by a member in this House as evidence for substantiation of any allegations made by the member under Standing Order number 91 must hence pass the threshold set by the 9 rules on admissibility. Honourable members, now moving to the issue of Honourable Fatuma Gedi, you will recall that on the material date, that is the 14th of April 2022, the Honourable Member did table several documents and in particular attempted to make fresh and further claims and then sought to substantiate them instead of simply tabling the documents as required. Ordinarily, the standing orders require a member providing evidence in substantiation to a matter claimed in the House to do so within the next sitting day. Given the seriousness of the claims that the member for Wajir County had made on the 12th of April 2022, the Speaker was sufficiently magnanimous, having granted her 2 days to comply with the standing orders. Whenever a member is required to avail evidence to substantiate a claim already made, the sequence of events is that he or she tables the evidence, the Speaker confirms authenticity and admissibility before any member proceeding to make further reference to the paper laid or to use them as evidence. Indeed, this is also the same sequence in a judicial proceeding. However, the Honourable Member failed to comply with this requirement. The Honourable Member therefore forfeited the opportunity to do so as set out by the standing orders. In view of the foregoing, the matter is spent in terms of Standing Order number 91, and there shall be no further substantiation by the member or debate on it. Honourable members, with respect to the documents that were tabled by the Honourable Fatuma Gedi, I note that they consisted of newspaper printouts, photographs, and certified court judgments, or a self-written statement by the Honourable Member, and other uncertified papers. In particular, I note that the court judgment did not bear any certification, and the documents tabled did not also relate to the claims made before the House by the Honourable Fatuma Gedi. Hence, their content lacks a nexus with the claims she made in the House. In this regard, therefore, Honourable Members, I rule that the documents are inadmissible for failure to meet the threshold set by the rules of admissibility that I have outlined above. Consequently, I direct that the documents tabled by the Honourable Member during the sitting of the House on 14th of April 2022 be expunged from the records of the House forthwith. I also direct the clerk to return the documents that the Honourable Member purported to table to her at an appropriate time. To this end, this matter is spent in terms of Standing Order number 91, and there shall be no further substantiation by the Honourable Member or further debate on it. Honourable Members, allow me to, however, caution all members against making claims or allegations in this House which the claimant cannot substantiate. You will indeed observe the standing order, that standing order number 91, subsection 2, provides that a member who is unable to substantiate allegations made in the House within the next sitting day is deemed to be disorderly within the meaning of standing order number 107, and hence it will be paramount for a member to be responsible for the accuracy of their statements and any facts which a member alleges or makes and claims to be true. Honourable members, further allow me to also caution members against making allegations which amount to discussing the conduct of a person whose removal from the office requires a decision of this House without a substantive motion. Indeed, you will recall that during the sitting of the House on 14th of April 2022, the member for Yatta, the Honourable Charles Kilonzo, did make reference to the provision of standing order number 87 and reminded the House of the need to propose a substantive motion if a member intends to discuss the conduct of a person whose conduct requires sanction by this House. Honourable members, for avoidance of doubt, standing order number 87, subsection 1, requires that any member who wishes to discuss and or refer adversely to the conduct of a person whose removal from office requires a decision of this House should only do so through a specific substantive motion of which at least 3 days' notice has been given. It is clear from this that the direction the Honourable Fatuma Gedi was taking this House to would circumvent the procedure laid out in standing order number 87 by discussing the conduct of a person without a substantive motion. Honourable members, now moving on to the case of the member for Embakasi East. You recall that on the particular day, I did order the member to withdraw from the chamber for the rest of the day owing to his disorderly conduct. However, the member declined. Honourable members, it was clear that the member's conduct was gross and unbecoming. As you are aware, standing order number 111 provides as follows, and I quote, "If any member shall refuse to withdraw when required to do so, by or under these standing orders, the Speaker or the Chairperson of the committee, as the case may be, having called the attention of the House or committee to the fact that recourse to force is necessary in order to compel such member to withdraw, shall order such member to be removed, and such member shall thereupon, without question put, be suspended from the service of the House for a minimum period of 21 days and a maximum period of 90 days, and shall during such suspension forfeit the right of access to the precincts of Parliament, and the Sergeant at Arms shall take necessary action to enforce the order." Close the quotes. Honourable members, despite calls from some of you for me to enforce this particular provision, I restrained myself from invoking standing order 111 on that day, and I intend, for purpose of good order, to restrain myself from invoking it even today. However, honourable members, it has not escaped the attention of this House that the member for Embakasi East indeed declined to leave the chamber when he was ordered to do so by the Speaker. Due to the gross disorder that arose in this House thereafter, I deferred my ruling on the member's conduct to today. In this regard, honourable members, I hereby order that the member for Embakasi East, the Honourable Babu Owino Ongili, to withdraw from the chamber and from the precincts of the National Assembly for a period of 5 days inclusive of today on account of gross disorderly conduct pursuant to standing order 107A of our standing orders. Honourable members, the Sergeant at Arms is to enforce this order immediately, and if the member is not presently in the chamber, the member shall not be allowed access to the precincts of Parliament or attendance to any committee meetings or parliamentary functions during the 5 days of the suspension. Any committee meeting attended by the member during the 5 days shall be invalid, since the member is now deemed to be a stranger. Further, the member shall not attend committee meetings as a member of the public. Finally, honourable members, may I draw the attention of the House and in particular to the House leadership on both sides, that this part of the session has 4 weeks comprising of 16 days only, unless the House, by resolution, decides to increase. The following critical business with the statutory timelines will need to be considered and passed by this House within those 4 weeks. Number one being the budget estimate for the financial years 2020-2023, the Appropriations Bill 2022, the Finance Bill 2022, and the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2022. In addition to these statutory pieces of legislation, none of members, the House Business Committee has accorded priority to other pieces of legislation, including the Huduma Bill 2021, the Children Bill 2021, the Universities Amendment Bill 2021, the National Disaster Risk Management Bill 2022, the Persons with Disabilities Bill 2021, the Public Finance Management Bill 2022, elections-related regulations from the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, debt-related regulations from the National Treasury, as well as a number of individual members' bills and approval of appointments to certain state offices. I may also wish to draw the attention of the House to the fact that the House Business Committee has considered in its today's meeting and approved a proposal that only bills, private members' bills that do not concern county governments will be given priority, since if they concern county governments, as you may all expect, they are likely to die in the other house, even if they are passed by this House. And therefore, to allow members who have legislative proposals that do not concern counties an opportunity to have them considered by the House during this short period. Honourable members, whereas I'm cognizant that politics is now at the center stage due to the forthcoming general elections, members should refrain from bringing to this House their political differences or use the floor of the House to advance their political agendas, hence causing disorder in the House. At this stage of the election cycle, honourable members, politicking should be a preserve of our political rallies and not the floor of the House. Indeed, it will not be possible for the pending business of the House to be considered in a disorderly and chaotic House. Honourable members, allow me to caution that as the representatives of the people, the pending business of the House that I have just highlighted is certainly one which is of huge significance to the people you represent. It is hence paramount that you conclude all the pending business before the House adjourns sine die. Honourable members, I also wish to emphasize that it is incumbent upon the House leadership on both sides to secure the maintenance of the quorum in the House. And to this end, as your Speaker, and indeed this is the position of the entire Presidium, allow me to reiterate that we shall not allow continuity of a sitting in which disorder and chaos is instigated by the same members who expect the Speaker to marshal and ensure that consideration of such business is expedited. The House is accordingly guided. And with regard to the member for Embakasi East, the Sergeant at Arms is instructed to ensure the member does not gain entry even to Continental House, County Hall, or into the presence of this compound, even using the Senate gates. Yes, on the number? Yeah, proceed. No, on members, there's no comment on No, not on that, not on that. Not on that. It's never, I thought you were doing your second term, Honorable Wadai. No, that one is over. I can give you the communication to read. Yes. Yes, let's move to the next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Order members. Members taking your seats. Take your seats. Take your seats. Take your seats. Honourable members, pursuant to the provision standing under number 42, subsection 2, I wish to report to the House that on Wednesday, 4th May 2022, I received a message from His Excellency the President conveying his nomination of 22 persons for appointment as ambassadors, high commissioners, and permanent representatives. Honourable members, the message conveyed in part that having exercised his powers under the provisions of Article 132, Clause 2, Paragraph E of the Constitution, in seeking the National Assembly's approval of the following persons for appointment to the offices of ambassadors, high commissioners, and permanent representatives to the stations specified hereunder. 1. Mr. Clement Nzomo Kiteme. These are ambassadors. Station Angola. Ms. Mary Mugwanja, Austria. Professor Bitange Demo, Belgium. 4. Mudhoni Geshohi, China. 5. Ambassador Gadhoga Chege, Cuba. 6. Dr. Caroline Wanjiru Karugu, Denmark. 7. Ambassador Salim Salim, Djibouti. 8. Major General A.G. Matiri, Egypt. 9. Ambassador Galma Boru, Indonesia. 10. Mr. Paul Domo, Mozambique. High Commissioners, number 11, Mr. Michael Sialai, Namibia. 12. Major General Andrew Ikenye, Nigeria. 13. Ms. Margaret Shava, Netherlands. 14. Ms. Amina Abdallah, Sultanate of Oman. 15. Ambassador Nyambura Kamau, Pakistan. 16. Mr. Boniface N. Mwilu, Qatar. 17. Ambassador Michael Oyugi, Spain. 18. Major General retired Thomas Chapkuto, Somalia. 19. Mr. Leonard Boyo, Turkey. 20. Major General retired George Owino, Uganda. Permanent representatives. Number 21, Professor Richard Bosire, Ambassador / Permanent Representative to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, in brackets UNESCO. And finally, 22, Major General retired Charles Getwai, Ambassador / Permanent Representative to the Intergovernmental Authority for Development, in brackets IGAD. Honourable members, you will also recall that on 2nd of February 2022, the House resolved that upon receipt of any name or names of a person or persons nominated for appointment to a state or public office from the President or any other office in the National Executive, the Speaker shall forthwith refer such message to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House. In this regard, honourable members, during the recess period, I did notify all members of receipt of the names and refer the same to the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations in accordance with the provisions standing under 45, subsection 1, relating to committee of messages to committees. The committee is required to commence necessary vetting processes as contemplated under the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act and standing under number 45, and thereafter table its report for consideration by the House within the statutory timelines. I thank you, honourable members.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Leader of the majority.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So I lay these papers. Allow me also to welcome members back for into this final session, and I hope we will have enough to prosecute. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, May the 10th, 2022. One is legal notice number 54 of 2022 relating to the public finance management, public investment management regulations of 2022, and the explanatory memorandum from the National Treasury. Number two is annual reports and financial statements in respect to the following institutions for the financial year 2020-2021, and these are the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. That batch is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect to the following institutions for the year ended 30th of June 2021, and the certificates therein, and these are the Executive Office of the President, the National Gender and Equality Commission, the Public Service Commission, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, the National Treasury, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, CFS, Public Debt Expenditure, State Corporations Appeal Tribunal, the State Department for Public Service, the State Department for Interior and Citizen Services, the State Department for Youth Affairs, and State Department for Gender. The fourth batch is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect to the following constituencies for the year ended 30th of June 2020, and the certificates therein. And these are Narok South, Ruaraka, Narok East, Mathare, and Awendo. The fifth batch is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect to the following constituencies for the year ended 30th of June 2019, and the certificates therein, and these are Bahati, Narok West, Narok North. And the sixth batch is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect to the Office of the Auditor General, management letter for the years 30th of June 2019 and 30th of June 2020, and the certificates therein. And lastly is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the Baringo Technical College for the years ended 30th of June 2017, 30th of June 2018, and 30th of June 2019, and the certificates therein. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The next, the Chairman, Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. A member, who is it?
Udege Nyatike.
Huh?
Udege Nyatike MP.
Oh, the member for Nyatike?
Yes.
Oh, great. Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, May 10, 2022. Report on the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on its consideration of the Persons with Disability National Assembly Bill number 61 of 2021. I thank you.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, the Kenya Roads Board Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 13 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Kenya Roads Board Act 2009 and for connected purposes. Order number 10, the Kenya Revenue Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 24 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Kenya Revenue Authority Act 1995 to make consequential amendments to other statutes and for connected purposes. Order number 11.
No.
Order number 9, the Supreme Court Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Supreme Court Act and for connected purposes. Order number 11, the Person with Disabilities Bill, National Assembly Bill number 61 of 2021, second reading.
Leader Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Persons with Disabilities Bill, being National Assembly Bill number 61 of 2021, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, let me start by thanking the Committee on Labor and Social Services because when we committed this bill to them, they made it a priority and were able to bring in the report which has just been tabled. And I do hope that members will agree with the committee because the issues are as contained within this bill. Honorable Speaker, the primary purpose of this bill is really to modernize the current law that relates to persons with disabilities, noting that the current law that we have was last updated in is actually the Persons with Disabilities Act number 14 of 2003. So we are almost 19 years into when the last law for relating to the people with disabilities was done, and yet so many events have taken place which I'll be enumerating. We also know it has several deficits and loopholes, partly also to do with the requirements within the Constitution that came in 2010 and which has not been updated. Honorable Speaker, according to the 2019 census, which is the only document that we have, the Kenya Population and Housing Census, it lists that there are about 2.2% of all Kenyans have a form of disability, with the most prevalent types, of course, being disabilities to do with mobility and capacity related. And hence, when you look at the population we are talking of, this bill comes into this House with an intention of catering for approximately 1.5 million Kenyans. I know we keep hearing of a number that there are 6.5 people with disabilities represented in this House, but the only record I can find is the census of 2019, which puts that number at approximately 1.5 million Kenyans. And I don't believe that between 2019 and now, the number of people with disability has increased exponentially to actually come to the 6.5. But we have 1.5 million Kenyans we need to take care of. In this regard, this bill recognizes all rights and entitlements of these people in this special category. These rights, again borrowing from the Constitution, are basically the right to equality and non-discrimination. We have the right to legal capacity, the right to marry and form a family, the right to privacy, the right to physical and mental integrity, in addition to all these other bills. But these specific ones are relevant to this group of persons. Additionally, the bill spells out some rights and entitlements unique to persons with disabilities, including the right not to be dismissed on account of any form of disability, and also the right to independent living, the right to participate in sports and recreation within a situation where there are no barriers to that participation, and several others that will be captured. Now, putting this into perspective, Honorable Speaker, since the enactment of the current Act in the year 2003, some developments I made mention include, in 2008, Kenya became a party to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, that is the 2006 CPRD, which established transformative norms and standards on the rights of persons with disabilities. Then in 2010, the Constitution of Kenya was promulgated, again including specific and robust provisions covering the rights of persons with disabilities. Then, in 2015, the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities issued its initial concluding observations to Kenya, making a number of recommendations on how our great republic should ensure the rights of persons with disabilities. And finally, in January of this year, just about 5 months ago, Kenya deposited its instrument of ratification on the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Africa 2008, which is referred to as the Disability Rights Protocol, which affirms the rights of persons with disabilities on the continent. Honorable Speaker, the National Council for Persons with Disabilities indicates that there have been numerous unsuccessful attempts to have this bill, but both protracted and lengthy stakeholder consultation have been a big hindrance, and I'm happy that at long last, people have realized you can only overanalyze a situation until you paralyze it. And this is one of those situations where so much analysis and everyone wanting their say in this bill was leading to becoming, putting a disability on the bill, moving into the next level. But at last we have managed to extract it from that, and the committee has fast-tracked it, and we now have a bill. And I'm sure, especially because this bill does not need to go to the Senate, and I would urge members, even as we process this bill, we take special cognizance for any amendments members would want to bring that would end up leading this bill to go to the Senate, because we don't have the luxury of that time. So we confine matters to matters that can be conversed and finished within this House without affecting the governance and whatever of county government, which will lead this bill to go to the Senate. And we don't want to get that, because 19 years is such a long period for people with disabilities waiting for a bill that is at par with the current laws, and we don't want to deny them that opportunity at this point. So, Speaker, when you look at the international stage, Kenya has in the past been hailed for being up to date with the adoption of progressive policies. And in 2018, the United Kingdom, the Department for International Development, which is within the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, did, together with the International Disability Alliance and the government of Kenya, host the first Global Disability Summit in London, and which had brought together both the state and non-state actors. And it's during this summit the representatives of the government made several commitments, including the ratification of various protocols and amending our law to keep pace with the changing circumstances. And I did mention earlier that just this January, one of those protocols was ratified as part of this commitment. Now, I believe that part of the reason our country stands out in the community of nations is because not only because of our industry, but also because we are a progressive nation committed to upholding the highest standards of human dignity. And indeed, I do recall in the last two national days that we have attended, His Excellency the President has been very clear in terms of articulating why we need to remove our people from or get rid of the indignities that they go through, indignities of seclusion, indignities of poverty, indignities of fear. And for people with disabilities, we're talking of liberating them from the indignities of discrimination and bringing them to the dignity of inclusivity within the larger community. So, Honorable Speaker, then, enacting this bill will be one of the ways of living up to this, our standard that we set for ourselves, and offering the best environment for all Kenyans to operate, and most importantly, earn a living within a dignified environment, and where nobody is discriminated on account of being physically different or than what we used to, what we call the normal person versus the person who is not, who are ably able differently, as the various things people call the different nomenclatures. So, Honorable Speaker, although this bill seeks to amend the 2003 Act, it is intentionally and purposely drafted to retain the progressive provisions of the current Act. So we're not just getting rid of the Act, the current Act as it is. Again, most of the provisions of the current Act are retained, but again, updated as far as possible. For example, the administrative institution, which is the National Council of Persons with Disability, and which has played a key role in advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities, has been retained in the bill. Additionally, it has also retained the incentives that are given to private employers who offer employment to the persons with disability, and most importantly, all the reliefs and the tax incentives that were given in terms of tax exemptions that are being given to people living with disability, including access to credit, preferential access to credit, have also been retained. So we are not losing anything in terms of what we already have as of 2003, but it's now being brought into a situation where we can have a modern law in line with the Constitution, and that will respond to issues that have risen between 2003 and to date. It's in this regard then, Honorable Speaker, that I wish to urge members of this House to support this bill as a show of their support and empathy to our brothers and sisters who are living with disabilities in our great republic, and to ensure that they are also mainstreamed into the larger society. Honorable Speaker, with those remarks, I beg to move, and I would wish to ask the Honorable Tom Ondege, on behalf of the Vice Chair is here. I hadn't seen him, but the Honorable Gideon Koske, the Vice Chair of the Committee on Labor and Social Services, to second.
Honorable Koske, for Chepalu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, it's my pleasant privilege and honor to second the second reading of the Persons with Disabilities Bill number 61 of 2021, which was established on the 1st December 2021. The bill was committed to the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, pursuant to the Standing Order 121 on 22nd February 2022 for consideration, including conducting public participation. Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that 4 significant events in the last 2 decades necessitated a review of the existing law on PWDs. First, it was in 2008. Kenya became a party to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, 2006, which established transformation norms and standards on the rights of persons with disabilities. And in 2010, Honorable Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya was promulgated, including specific and robust provisions covering the rights of persons living with disabilities. And in 2015, Honorable Speaker, the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities issued its initial concluding observation to Kenya, making multiple recommendations on how Kenya should ensure the rights of persons with disabilities. And finally, in January 2022, Kenya deposited its instrument of ratification on the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of persons with disabilities in Africa 2018, which affirms and constitutionalizes the rights of persons with disabilities on the continent. Honorable Speaker, the law must be anchored on the social model of disability, which recognizes that it is the society that disables the individuals by failing to address physical, social, and economic barriers. The language and terms of art used in the law must abide by minimum standards of accepted usage, thereby ensuring effective communication and avoiding repetitive ableism and stigmatization. Honorable Speaker, the bill intends to tighten the weak points in policy and seal caps that pose enforcement to strengthen the legislative framework relating to PWDs. The bill also establishes a clear framework for exercising human rights by persons with disabilities and their full participation in all spheres of life, including political, social, and economic fields. Honorable Speaker, the committee, having considered the Persons with Disability Bill 2021, Bill number 61 of 2021, recommends that the bill be agreed to, subject to the amendments in the report. I beg to second, and I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Order members, order members, order members. Order members, I propose a question, which is that the Persons with Disabilities Bill, National Assembly Bill number 61 of 2021, be now read a second time. Member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this bill. So, Speaker, this is an extremely important bill for this country. I know we already have a bill, an act of 2014 that is dealing with matters of disability. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill, apart from just strengthening that act, it also aligns with the new requirements that arise from Article 54 of our current constitution, so that it's actually aligning the act with the constitution. Mr. Speaker, all the issues that relate to the issues with disability actually are in one way or another linked to access. And the problems of disabilities in this country is big. We have about 1.5 to 2 million people that have one form of disability or another. And Mr. Speaker, these are members of our society, but we must look after, that we must treat with dignity and in all ways, despite their disability. And in the past, Mr. Speaker, this has not been possible. There are cases where even persons with disability have actually been hidden from the society and therefore denied all activities that are within the society. And if you look at it, Mr. Speaker, the biggest issue is that of access. Many of us who are able-bodied may not actually appreciate the problem of access for persons with disability, starting from just issues of physical access, how you get into buildings, how you get into vehicles, how you use public toilets, how you go into high-rise buildings. And Mr. Speaker, even using lifts, where there are lifts, there are still problems of access. Mr. Speaker, we may not realize the problems of access, for example, with people with a disability in hearing, how they actually participate in all activities, even in politics. Mr. Speaker, that is a problem with them. Mr. Speaker, if you think of people who are visually handicapped, how they go about, how they participate, and all these, Mr. Speaker, need to be addressed in law. And although the Act of 2003 addresses this. There are gaps that need to be filled. Mr. Speaker, persons with disability are actually subject to discrimination in many ways, sometimes in subtle forms, even in our language, even how we treat them, even how we relate with them, even how we give them access to public functions. Mr. Speaker, it is actually a big problem. Mr. Speaker, even the right to property, sometimes people don't get their property because basically they're disabled and then they're taken advantage of. Mr. Speaker, persons with disability are subjected to a high form of stigma. Many times, some actually decide not even to participate in all activities of the society because of the way they are treated. Arrangements, even if you go to meetings, arrangements, even if you go to functions, nobody thinks that how shall we get the persons with disability to participate. Even when they are able to participate, they are not treated with dignity. The amount of indignity that they suffer is actually great. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill because I know this bill actually addresses all these issues that are facing the persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, Part 2 of this bill sets out very clearly what these rights should are. They sets out that there should be no discrimination, the legal capacity should be addressed, the right to family, the right to privacy, and the right to health care. Even if the health facilities are available, can persons with disability actually access them? And that same Part 2 also brings the issue of a barrier-free environment. I know some of us may not even realize that even when you go into lifts and you find Braille in the lifts, you get the lifts talking, they think it's just an advancement of technology. Those are actually the rights of persons with disability and the persons who have disability of hearing, so that they can use those facilities. And I support that it actually brings that, the bill brings that out very carefully and provides provisions. Mr. Speaker, this bill provides for the council. We have a council already, but at least it needs to be strengthened, and it is how the council is appointed, how people are appointed, the qualifications that are needed. But more importantly, in relation to the council, prior to this bill coming into effect, if it is passed, actually the council has only offices in Nairobi. And if you expect persons with disability to travel from all over the country to get the issues addressed at the council, that is actually a form of discrimination. So this bill provides that the council will have offices in various parts of the countries, in the counties and so on. So that is extremely important. So Speaker, this bill, I support it because it also provides incentives. Look at the areas of tax. Mr. Speaker, it is important that the persons with the disabilities sometimes use materials that we don't use. And if these materials are taxed, we actually then subject to higher tax. So this bill addresses that we can have tax exemption on the materials that are used by persons with disability, on the materials that are used to manufacture items used by persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, if you look at, even if they have their businesses, I think we should give consideration in terms of taxation. The process as it has been before, getting somebody to be certified and registered has been a bit complex, and I think this bill attempts to promote that. Mr. Speaker, this bill rightly links with the country, but the mover, the leader of government business, indicated that if we then bring those ones in, it may then take the bill to the Senate. So probably we'll have to look, but that's a very important function. Even if we exclude them because we want the bill to pass, later on we must have amendments that will bring them up, because people with disabilities actually live in the counties. So the convenience of passing the bill should not surpass the convenience of getting the right thing done. Mr. Speaker, if you look at this bill has created a schedule. And Schedule 1 of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is actually, in my view, the most important part of this bill. It has put into place in private institutions, in public institutions, in public transport. It has put the requirements that are needed. I know many of us may not appreciate how do people with disability, particularly physical disability involving the limbs, how do they get into a bus? How do they get into a train? How do they come off a train? Now, this bill makes provision. For example, I think we must have bus stops where actually there are platforms, and we must actually go for buses that actually have a flat bottom, which is aligned with the stage, so that somebody with a wheelchair can just wheel them in. Inside the buses, there actually should be a space or two where the person with disability will go in. So, Mr. Speaker, these are extremely important. And therefore, we must also align this with international standard, so that when we have persons with disability in Kenya, the facilities they use here must be exactly the same as the facilities they will meet when they go to other countries. So, Mr. Speaker, we must have in the building regulations. This cannot just be said, put in regulations and left to implement themselves. Other laws, even the building laws, will have to be amended so that these requirements of persons with disabilities are interred in the law, and that buildings can only be approved as habitable if they involve these facilities. Mr. Speaker, with that I support this bill, and we look at the amendments when the time comes in the Committee of the Whole House to actually strengthen it further. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Shamala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that I welcome wholeheartedly this bill on the persons with disabilities bills. The reason being that indeed people with disabilities are extremely discriminated against in this country. And we're talking about over 1.5 million people. And the dignity, and I've said it time and time again, the right to dignity is the platform of all rights. When the time comes at the committee stage, I have noted, and some of these things or amendments could come through regulations, but it is my personal desire to see them entrenched in legislation, that issues such as service dogs for the blind are allowed into all public buildings. There are certain areas, certain public places which will not allow dogs. And we're not talking about pets, but the seriousness of service dogs for people who are visually impaired. It is with these few remarks, Mr. Speaker, that I support this bill.
Member for Makueni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, this bill does not concern the counties as it is now, but when it comes to its implementation, obviously the counties will have a very great role to play, especially in modification of buildings, because most of that law is generated from the counties, and I believe in one way or another the counties have a role to play. But for now, we need this law urgently. Many people with disabilities have suffered in this country. Mr. Speaker, the experiences I have in Makueni County is that we have children with disabilities who are hidden by parents or people who live with them, and they never get an opportunity to go to school or to have their rights as now protected in the Constitution and in this bill could be protected. Under the previous law did not cover that well, nor as the current law cover that well. So I thought really we have something to do Mr. Speaker, also people with disabilities have been mistreated by people who stay with them. Some have been locked up. I'm aware of one case whereby the person with a disability had sort of gotten depression, and when the normal people are leaving the home, they will lock up in chains this particular person with disability till those people come back. This law is also talking about food, access to food and water. And people with disability have also been denied that if they are not able to help themselves and they've been abandoned for the day, then they'll end up without food and water. But the most important thing is, how do we implement this law? How do we make sure that people who break the law, as far as the people with disabilities or who abuse their rights, are dealt with properly? What is the system of getting the evidence to the police and to the prosecutor, the special prosecutor I've seen in this case? Most probably, we could also come up with special courts dealing with this, or some of the special courts were already in existence, like children, deal with these particular people. So although the people who are drafting this law have done a very good job, there's a lot of work to be done at third reading so that we can improve this law and make sure it serves the people with the disability better. The people with disability also, Mr. Speaker, have gone a lot of, rejection under the system which is in place. And the money is implemented by the national government, the identification, the infrastructure put by the national government to the country, and also the council which has been existing have not been very tight. There has been a lot of corruption in that system. Skills have not been impacted properly, especially for the poor people with disability, poor children with disability, and a lot of time they are left at the mercy of well-wishers in children homes. And actually the Member of Parliament has a very big role to play when it comes to dealing with people with disability, and a lot of times a Member of Parliament has to chip in here and there or mobilize well-wishers to visit different children homes where people with disability are in school or are going through training. And I think one thing which should be stressed is the skills for people with disabilities, to make sure every person has access to education, has access to skills, and can be able to earn a living, and also has access to medication. Because some of the people with disabilities have been treated, they have managed to be treated, and others have gained it through accidents, Mr. Speaker. I have a case in Makueni where somebody was working in one of the cement companies, and something went wrong in the processes, and the hot cement was sprayed in their eyes, and he became blind. And ever since, he's been living with disability, and there is no effort to make him see again medically. And it is not possible. So that person is already living with a disability. One of the issues also which has not been handled very well in this is those people who pretend to have become disabled or have disability, and they begin to enjoy privileges which people with disabilities enjoy. And again, those privileges have not been put properly in this law. They are still left scattered in some administrative process somewhere, or in the regulations of other acts of parliament, making it difficult to implement the goodies in the constitution for people with disability. So when you look at it in totality, it's a very, very important law. This is a very big move so far. It is going to assist the implementation and the education to people living with people with disability, or people who acquire disability already when they are mature. And coming back to those who probably are recovering from an accident, have pretended to be disabled, have started enjoying those privileges, have recovered, there's no mechanism of getting to identify and moving them back to where they are. Unfortunately, this law, Mr. Speaker, is being discussed when our good friend, the Honorable Sankok, is not here, who is a Member of Parliament living with disability and has been part of the system of assisting people with disability in this country. Unfortunately, as all of us know, he lost his son, and is handling that matter, and we really want to on my part, and I believe many members want to say Paula to him and condole with him, but he would have given it very serious input as a person who has been affected and has been practicing these already and knows where the loopholes are. And I believe we'll be back by the time we do the third reading, so that he can help us get into some of the details which could help the House serve the people with disability better, and not leave the total responsibility to a member of Parliament without resources and without a proper plan on how the national government is going to help the people with disability. Otherwise, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support and urge members to do so. I thank you.
Honorable Danita Gatti.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to confirm and to say that I welcome and support the Persons with Disabilities Bill of 2021, and I want to thank the committee, Mr. Speaker, for the effort that they have put into this work, Mr. Speaker, to come up with this bill. Mr. Speaker, issues persons with disabilities in this country date back, Mr. Speaker, to I don't know when, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament of this House have persons with disabilities as their voters and as their people, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am happy because we are talking about persons who live in our constituencies and in our wards, Mr. Speaker, and who vote to keep us here as members of Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, I support that the committee has thought it wise to actually repeal the Persons with Disabilities Act and to actually strengthen it. The PWD's Act of 2003, Mr. Speaker, I'm very much conversant with it. Mr. Speaker, I am a candidate of disability, as you are aware. And Mr. Speaker, I have seen firsthand how persons with disabilities of this country and of the world are treated, Mr. Speaker, than any other persons, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am here to also say that I support, because I do represent persons with disabilities, and in my capacity, Mr. Speaker, in this House, as the President of the Commonwealth Parliamentarians with Disabilities Network, and say, Mr. Speaker, that we as a country are doing well. We are trying, Mr. Speaker, comparatively on matters disability. And I want to applaud this country, Mr. Speaker, on the amount of work that we have done. Mr. Speaker, sir, the challenges that continue to face persons with disabilities in this country, Mr. Speaker, starting with the mere fact that, Mr. Speaker, accessibility continues to be a problem. Mr. Speaker, unless you are disabled in this country, you will not understand what it means to look for accessibility. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that this bill is seeking to actually talk about accessibility. And accessibility is not just about physical accessibility into a building. It is about information, Mr. Speaker, any form of accessibility that we may want to access. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that this bill is seeking to address what we have been having in terms of the challenges of accessibility. Mr. Speaker, sir, unemployment, Mr. Speaker, which this bill is seeking to address. Mr. Speaker and my colleagues in this House, the biggest challenge for persons with disabilities in Kenya is unemployment. Mr. Speaker, persons with disabilities are not employed. Persons with disabilities do not have jobs, Mr. Speaker. They are not trained, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, their lives are not well, just like any other person, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that this bill is seeking to actually decriminalize, Mr. Speaker, any employer, Mr. Speaker, who actually dismisses persons with disabilities based on disability. Mr. Speaker, and that is why we are saying, Mr. Speaker, if you look at this Article 70, which actually says no person shall on the ground of disability deny a person with disability employment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, of all the poor Kenyans in this country, 90% are persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, we are trying as a country, but Mr. Speaker, we must actually work hard to ensure that persons with disabilities are actually taken care of. Mr. Speaker, we are in a space and at a time when we are doing our own elections, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I am happy that this bill is seeking, Mr. Speaker, to say that no person with disability shall be denied a right to participate in the political process, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, even if we are talking like that in this bill, look at how many persons with disabilities are even participating in the political process. Mr. Speaker, it is not good. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am happy that if you look at Article 29, where we are talking about the civic and political rights of persons with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, most of our persons with disabilities are denied these rights, Mr. Speaker. Of all the rights in this country, this right to participate in civic and political rights is a right that is denied. And Mr. Speaker, Article 29 says that every person with disability has a right to participate in political and public life and the opportunity to enjoy them on an equal basis of others. But, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the just results that we have had of nominations, persons with disabilities have not participated. So, Mr. Speaker, we have a duty to continue to enhance the lives of our persons with disabilities in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, from where I sit in the Commonwealth, Mr. Speaker, you will remember, obviously, Mr. Speaker, that in 2018, Kenya and the UK co-hosted the first Global Disability Summit. And, Mr. Speaker, those are the commitments that continue to shape this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, our country has ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to give effect, Mr. Speaker, to the commitment that Kenya must make it possible for persons with disabilities to participate not only in social issues, Mr. Speaker, but also in economic and political sphere. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am glad that we are looking at this bill. Mr. Speaker, we now have the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Mr. Speaker, for a long time, disability in this country has been a national issue. Now, Mr. Speaker, through the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, every constituency and every county is going to have an office of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Meaning, Mr. Speaker, that we are living within the provisions of the Constitution that says that disability must devolve. So, Mr. Speaker, when we are saying that disability must devolve, we therefore must ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we also channel our budgets and our economic affairs, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that disabled people who live in our communities and in our wards and in our villages, Mr. Speaker, are able to be supported, Mr. Speaker. And I want this House to know that persons with disabilities are called persons with disabilities, not persons living with disabilities, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, as I speak in this August House today, Mr. Speaker, I am happy on behalf of the Kenyans with disabilities that I represent that, Mr. Speaker, this August House of 2022 now, this May, Mr. Speaker, is actually looking at the issue of persons with disabilities bill, Mr. Speaker. This has been a long document. This has been a journey for persons with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, to be able to present themselves, to be able to live a dignified life, Mr. Speaker, because we are candidates of disability, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, for me, as a member of parliament representing persons with disabilities, I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, this is a huge day for them because we are discussing persons with disabilities issues in this House, me included, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, at the third reading, I will bring amendments, Mr. Speaker, that will go into strengthening this bill, Mr. Speaker, to ensuring that persons with disabilities continue. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you because, Mr. Speaker, if this is your last session as a Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we'll say we discussed this bill, Mr. Speaker, in this House, Mr. Speaker. And I'm glad that we are actually discussing such an important matter on behalf of the millions of persons with disabilities in this House. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, our budget must translate to what we are talking about disability matters when it comes to those issues, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Member for Tharaka.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, allow me to rise and support this bill. And before I make any comments, also allow me to pass my words of condolences to the leader of people with disabilities, the Honorable Sankok, for the tragic accident where he lost his son. May they be consoled, and may the dear son rest in everlasting peace. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. The main reason being that for a long time, we have treated people living with disabilities as semi-human. We have been considering them to be half persons And this is one reason why, especially in the African culture, they are given strange names, even in Kiswahili like Kiwete, which really is demeaning and dehumanizing. Therefore, in spite of the fact that we need moral obligations to ensure that we treat people with disabilities as human beings like any other, with the full human rights like any other persons, it's also important to address those rights, obligations, liabilities into law, which can be relied on in the future to ensure that these persons are actually protected. So this law is timely. I would urge the House to pass it. And when it comes to establishing offices to cater for persons with disabilities, I will be urging the government to ensure that my constituency, Tharaka, has such an office, and that we are able to treat the people with disabilities in that constituency as full human beings and not as semi-humans, as most people strive to do. This is a very good law, which begins with recognizing the rights of persons with disabilities, and we have a whole part 2, which consists of over 28 sections dealing with what are the rights of persons with disabilities. And right from the beginning, where they have right to equality and non-discrimination, to right to privacy, to right to human dignity, right to education, right to health and sports, culture, civic and political rights, and every other right that they have. These are rights derived from the Constitution, which deals with the fundamental human rights. And when we reduce this into statute, it means we are protecting these persons living with disabilities. Importantly, we also have provisions dealing with enforcement of those rights, so that we do not mistreat persons with disability and get away with it. The person who tries to do this should actually face the full force of the law as provided in this particular law. From there, we are establishing the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, a revision of what we have today and from the previous law of 2003, such that this council, which will have more powers than it has always had, will be taking care of persons who have been registered with the council as members, and also who actually profess the fact that they require protection under this law. This is one area which is part 3 of the law, which we must look into to ensure that it is strengthened. And this council is able to fully take care of persons with disabilities, including enforcement of their fundamental rights and fundamental rights and whatever the right they have. Then from there we have part 4, which deals with the reliefs and the incentives. This is to ensure that persons with disabilities are well taken care of, and that persons who have such people living with them are able to take care of them if given exemptions and incentives. Exemptions would be what they are exempted from, including taxes, including other incentives which will make us provide for even children with disability going to school, such that from now henceforth we should have reliefs for these children. When a child with a disability goes to school, the levies that are charged by the school, the levies that are charged by the government, including universities, should either be waived totally, or there is a substantial reduction so that these persons are able to acquire the necessary education. Then we have part 5 that deals with the relationship between the national government and county governments on matters of disability. And this is why possibly there will be necessity of this law going into the Senate. But that notwithstanding, whether that happens or it doesn't, the fact remains that some of these rights, according to persons with disabilities, are rights that fall under the devolution chapter of our Constitution and have to be enforced by the county governments. It is therefore important that the county governments are informed of their obligations when they are dealing with the persons with disabilities, including a provision in the Constitution, a provision in the procurement laws that persons with disabilities have to get certain percentages of contracts, either in the national government and in the county governments. This is an obligation that falls squarely under the county governments, because we know for sure what happens in county governments sometimes cannot be accounted for, and sometimes it's what we would term as blatant breach of the law when it comes to dealing with either gender issues or persons with disabilities. Part 6 is quite important because it deals with the offenses and penalties. And this is important because, as we said, there is a whole host of a chapter with rights of these persons. What happens to persons who decide to breach those particular rights? What obligations do they have? And where they commit criminal offenses, what penalties are they likely to be faced with? It is important to notice that it's an offense to discriminate against persons with disabilities. It is also an offense that we cannot abuse or exploit or use violence against persons with disabilities. It has also now become an offense to conceal persons with disabilities. What we've been told that sometimes, especially in the African culture, we find it a little bit shameful to expose persons with disabilities to strangers, or in the name of this is maybe a Kiwete, and therefore I do not wish my visitors to see that I have such a person. It will now become an offense if you conceal such a person, and especially from the authorities that fall under the National Council. It is also an offense to treat persons with disabilities in a degrading manner, in a manner that lowers their dignity as human beings, in a manner that shows that you are trying to treat that person as semi-human. If anybody does this, then that becomes an offense and it is punishable by the law. And the penalties that are prescribed, some of them are quite prohibitive, which is what good law should actually do. Then we have miscellaneous provisions, including the general penalty clause, which is section 78, and the other provisions, which in my view do buttress the fact that Kenya now wants to treat persons with disabilities with the dignity they deserve and accord those persons the protection of the law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do support.
Cares about it. What is the use of talking about waste management? People are saying this is the right time. We already had a lot of laws which could be used to take care of this. There's, as Senator Fakia said, we have a very bad habit as a country and as people. We don't even care where we dispose our waste. The normal one, forget about the other serious ones and the ones which are severe. The normal waste from our households, we just throw them anywhere. They rot in those dustbins. Those were the few dustbins which are in town. Look at what was happening in this country for a very long time. The dump site. You see the chokoras, the ones who are picking things there, trying to recycle. How do they look? When you look at these companies, which are supposed to be collecting normal waste from households, the workers, how do they look? The vehicles, how does it look? You know, when you make it look like this is not even a proper business, when really those guys who are doing these businesses are minting millions from the locals and from the people they collect the waste from. Just the simple, normal waste from households. The guys who are working in those vehicles are dirty. The vehicles are dirty. When they pass next to you, you feel like fainting. You know, when you go to other places, at least those ones who collect the waste have their, overall clothes. They are well protected. You don't care about our people. We don't care about anything. And we are talking about laws, which will not be helping anybody. So I feel, as far as I am concerned, this is not the right approach. We have to change attitude first. Try and teach ourselves that we have to clean our environment ourselves. In some areas, you see, when you enter a house, the house is very clean. But outside the house, it's dirty everywhere. So we have that problem. So I don't think whether these laws will help anything. Everywhere you go is an eyesore. The people who are collecting the garbage are dirty themselves. So these things will really not help. Look at our waters, our waterways. The few small streams you have in Nairobi, they are all stinking, they are all dirty. We have created something called NEMA, a mammoth organization, which I don't know what it does. Why do you go creating another authority called Waste Management Authority when NEMA, with all the resources and all what has been done, could not function all this long? So I think this is just duplication as far as I'm concerned. It might not be helpful. It's a waste of money. People want to create positions for themselves so that when some other possibly, my take might be that there are issues which are coming up. There are some international organizations who possibly want to dump things here. And an organization is being created so that people want to go and just, do some funny things. As far as I am concerned, Madam Speaker, this bill is of no consequence. We have had several bills, as I've said. The NEMA Act authority is there. NEMA can handle this. So I don't see why we want to create another organization with so many, other people who will be employed when many of our already bodies and boards are dying because of lack of finances and lack of what to do. We have, as I said, our waterways, our streams here are dirty. You go to the river, you see what has happened to it. And we cannot even manage that. If NEMA cannot even manage that, what is the use of waste disposal? When you come to organic waste can be used, if people are educated proper, they can be used to create energy. We need a lot of energy in this country. Biogas. It's not only the dump, the waste from the animal waste, but even the other normal organic waste can be used to generate that. And that is a simple technology which can be used in households, which can be used anything. The national government failed to perform in this aspect for a very long time, for the last 50, 60 years. Now, county governments, which are already suffering, which have no money, are being told you will take over these things. County government will do this. County government will do this. Money should follow functions. But when there is no money which is given to the county government, and the little that they were getting, they were already mismanaging, we want to create other enormous organizations who will just create more employment and cause more harm to the counties. Counties have failed to even collect the small garbages which are there, which are within the county headquarters. Forget about the other sub-counties. You go to every county, everywhere in this country, everywhere there's unnecessary garbage, which is mostly organic, and some few plastics, which can be recycled. Now, the one of the e-waste is becoming a great hazard to this country as well. Nothing is being done. So what is the use of creating all these things when NEMA has failed? So this is one question which I want to ask. And there are many other organizations and ministries which were supposed to have handled this. They have failed. How will county government perform? With no money, resources are not being released. National Assembly is bringing this bill here when they are curtailing the money which is supposed to go to county government. This financial year, there is no increment. And you know what we have undergone before. It is the same as the last county allocation of, the county allocation of revenue bill is the same. Nothing has changed from 370 to 370. And we want to add more. According to this bill, it's stated that once it's passed and signed by the president, within 1 month, it should come, or within 1 year, it should come into practice. These are just, write-ups which are not helpful as far as I'm concerned. So whether my colleagues say this is the right time for this bill, this is very encouraging. As far as I am concerned, it is nothing. This is just papers, and papers which are being brought about and nothing happens. No implementation. And when there's no implementation, what is the use of passing unnecessary laws which will not be helpful to this country, Madam Speaker? According to what the county government is supposed to do, and number 9 here, Article 9, county government shall be responsible for implementing the devolved functions of waste management, establishing the financial operational conditions for the effective performance of these functions. Where will that money come from? The county government shall ensure that county waste management legislation is in conformity with this act, and within a period of 1 year of the coming into operation of this act. So all these things are just imaginations. County government shall ensure that disposal of waste generated within the county is done within the counties that. They cannot even do that. County councils are better sometimes when you look at some of these issues, Madam Speaker. So as far as I am concerned, I don't agree with this bill. It is not helpful. It's a waste of time because there are no resources. County government has been given all the job to do everything, but nothing. The national government wants just to create a board which they will employ the people and they will not be given funds and nothing will happen. So, Madam Speaker, I oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Agnes Mudama online.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to make my contribution to this waste management bill, which is, to me, overdue. Because, Madam Speaker, we need this law like yesterday. Because when you go to most of our counties, especially the county where I come from, the county of Machakos, all the towns are rotten with garbages which are not collected. Surely, Madam Speaker, the senator who has just gone out of speaking, he says that the county government has no money, but they collect revenue from the women and the men who do business, mamambogas in the towns. But they don't collect the garbages. I think the same money can also be utilized for at least carry the garbages. And also the county governments as workers, and most of them has trucks which can do the garbage collection. Madam Speaker, as I speak, yesterday we had a prayer meeting in Machakos town, and the place was everywhere flies were there, bad smell. And not only Machakos town, all towns. And Madam Speaker, as I go around doing my campaigns, most of the small towns in our counties have not even some essential, facilities like toilets. Madam Speaker, and those markets has been there for many years, not even sheds for the mama boggers to use when they are selling. And according to Article 43, every Kenyan has a right to clean water and clean environment, and even a place where they can do business, a clean place where they can do business. Madam Speaker, I think this law will help because I've seen some companies which are doing recycling plastics and making even bricks to build houses. If we can implement this kind of a project in our country, I think it can help even giving most of our citizens jobs, which are lacking. You know, most of our young people have no jobs. So if we do the recycling of these plastics and make the blocks, we can even build, cheap houses with them, not buying the stones that we build with. Madam Speaker, I think this bill is very timely and it should be implemented, but the government should also make sure that the counties get funds. But some of the counties, even if they get funds, they misuse by going on trips, just recurrent expenses, and not even doing any projects that benefit our citizens. Madam Speaker, I thank you and I thank Majority Leader for this bill and the National Assembly for this bill. I pray that this bill will be implemented even before the term of this Senate is over, and it can be signed and it can go into work. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support this bill.
Thank you, Senator Kavindu. Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohammed Faki, Mombasa. Oh, he spoke already? Thank you. We are not cleaned our page. Senator Olekina Ledama, Senator of Narok.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How are you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time, but congratulations. I saw a very good picture somewhere. Madam Speaker, I don't know whether to support this bill or not, because I've gone through this bill, and I know the Majority Leader moved this bill, but he moved it, and it's not his bill. This bill belongs to the National Assembly. Madam Speaker, I share the same sentiments with my colleague, Senator Abdullahi Ali, because although waste management is a very lucrative business, sometimes I think it's a bit ridiculous that in Parliament we sit down, develop legislation, and most of the legislation which is developed here is aimed at one thing. Before, every legislation which was sponsored by the government was aimed at one thing: creating an authority. Madam Speaker, if I was to support this bill, the first thing which I think is actually, I don't know whether I should use that word, is it parliamentary or not? The word stupid? It's unparliamentary. But if you look at from section 6 of, I didn't move it, I requested. Madam Speaker, if you look at this bill, whoever thought about this bill had a good idea, because they say waste management is not being done properly, but this should be our own responsibility as citizens of this country to have a better country to live in. If you look at this bill, Madam Speaker, and I hope you can take some minute and read, because I've just skimmed through it, and one of the things that really just baffles me is if you read from section 6, it says, there shall be a council to be known as the Waste Management Council, which shall be established by a cabinet secretary within 1 year of the coming into operations of this act. It proceeds and says, the council shall comprise of a chairperson appointed by the president. Jesus Christ. Why are we now getting into the issue of reducing the work of a president to go and appoint a chairperson to be able to help us, citizens of this beautiful country we call Kenya, manage waste? It should be a responsibility for every individual. So, Madam Speaker, if I was to support this bill, from section 6 all the way to section what? Section 9 must be deleted. Because this is just an avenue of creating jobs, to create an authority, a council, have powerful people, to draw a salary, have allowances, have people travel, because that's what you do, Madam Speaker. Travel abroad, get a huge per diem, is a chairperson appointed by the president. Go and say, I'm going to benchmark to see how other countries manage their waste. Yet, we have not even been able to manage the waste in this country. Why on earth should we start creating an authority, giving the cabinet secretary? Is it that the cabinet secretary does not have work to do? We have NEMA, the National Environmental and Management, what is it called? National Management Environmental Authority. What is the job? If you go to NEMA, they'll tell you certain functions have been devolved. What we need to do, Madam Speaker, because another section here, which I'll try to make sure that people see. If you go to another ridiculous provision, section 18, it says every county government shall prepare and submit to the county assembly for approval an integrated county waste management plan once every 5 years. They're now putting it into their CIDP. Madam Speaker, the county government should develop a policy. We should not have the cabinet secretary sitting down and say, we are now going to develop a policy on how we are going to manage waste, and we will also devolve this policy, so that the county government and the assemblies will develop a policy that will be put in their CIDP for 5 years. This is ridiculous. Madam Speaker, if we are serious as legislators and we want to help this country deal with the issue of waste management, the first thing we need to do is that we must reduce it to our own homes. In our own household, Madam Speaker, every so often. I'll give you a good example of these temporary homes we live in Nairobi. You know, there is all these trucks that comes and collect waste. What we do there is that we bundle all the waste in one basket. The first thing we want to do, and NEMA has to do this, because NEMA is another body where people just collect money for the sake of it. They don't do nothing. What NEMA should be doing now is to say, okay, number one, Senator Pogisio, the majority leader in your house, you need to have 3 bins. Bin number 1 is all the organic waste, all the food, all the vegetables. Bin number 2 is all the recyclable materials, paper, plastic, actually paper. And then bin number 3 is any other hazardous waste, or bottles and stuff like that which you can be able to recycle. We need first of all to define what can be recycled and what can also be used to generate revenue. Madam Speaker, if you go to Italy, and I did that to study the issue of waste management myself about 10 years ago, you will see companies that make billions of shillings. Even in the US, where I lived for 20 years, waste management companies make billions of shillings. Why? They create dumps where they go and recycle that food that you waste. They also take that and they turn that into organic manure. Yeah, Madam Speaker, even when we are constructing the roads, you'll find the people who have been given the tender to construct the road, they'll go cut the trees. When they cut the trees, of course, they expose us to all these environmental hazardous things. They bring drought. And then they just sell that for firewood. And then the leaves, they are just let to rot right there. They are swept, sometimes they are put in, and they are dumped in Dandora. To give you an example of Nairobi. In Nakuru, Madam Speaker, is a very good friend of mine called Zakayo. Zakayo owns a timber yard. When I came back from Italy, I went to his timber yard. And in his timber yard, because he's been doing, it's a mill, so he's been milling timber for a very long time. The waste is almost as high as this parliament. And it just sits there. When I got there, I said, Jesus, these are billions of shillings. With a simple equipment, you turn that, you create compost, you use it to grow trees. You use it for your flower gardens. You know, we have buildings now coming up where people are planting trees. I have one of those. You cannot put soil there. You use compost. So I think what we need to do first, before we even think of passing a law like this, is we need to ask ourselves, are we ready to have a clean environment? If we are, what is the work of NEMA? NEMA then should be engaging county governments in ensuring that they clean their cities first. Killing our cities, dustbins. You know, if you go to our markets are dustbins. And there's no county government, Madam Speaker, which wants to improve on the markets. Because the person who is cleaning there wants to make some little money, but they're still filthy. So I don't think I can support such a bill, which all that it aims to do, I'm sorry, Majority Leader, you're just the messenger. So I'll spare you that a little bit. But I'll be honest to say, this bill just ought to create authority, to give the Cabinet Secretary more jobs for nothing. In fact, the first thing we should do is that NEMA should develop regulations. They should go sit down with the county governments and say, let us look at your spatial plan. Where are we getting income? When we are looking at getting income, let us use technology to ensure that Senator Pogisio, who owns this building, has got the responsibility to ensure that in that building, waste management is priority number one. He must have 3 bins. If he does not have 3 bins, no license to him. That is how we develop clean environments. So it will be Senator Pogisio's responsibility to ensure that every person who occupies that building as a tenant is responsible. And that responsibility will also be able to spread even in our homes. The only thing that NEMA did, which I think we should say congratulations to them, or the Ministry of Environment, is to ban plastics. Because our counties were littered with plastic waste all across. At least now they are still there because they still find their panya routes to come into the country. But at least it's better than before. There's no way a legislation is going to come and help clean up our cities when we are all dirty and filthy. The first thing that we need to do is to recognize that we do not need a law to be able to manage our waste. The second thing we need to do is to ensure that we can now use that waste to make money. If my good friend Zakayo, Mzee Zakayo in Nakuru, would just bring a small machine, he would be exporting fertilizer. He'd be exporting compost, just like it's exported all over. Madam Speaker, if you go to Game Supermarket now, or you go to these big, or even Carrefour, you will find compost, which has been imported from other countries. It's as if we don't have waste in this country. So, Madam Speaker, I don't think I can support this. I'm sorry, the person who drafted it had a good mind because he wants to see a clean environment, but I think cleanness starts with you. Now, how do we deal with this matter, Madam Speaker? Number one, every county government must ensure that before you issue a license to any either building or anybody, that person must come up with a policy or rather a plan on how they are going to manage that waste. Because everybody pays a license, and in that license there is a waste management fee. But that money is just collected and it's just, mixed with all the other resources. And even those county governments do not even clean those cities. Madam Speaker, I was in West Pokot recently, and I would actually say that the small towns that we went to campaign were cleaner because people do not have a lot. But here in Nairobi, because we accumulate so much, we go shopping a lot. Our people only go to the market once a week to buy their food. So maybe you'll find a small plastic bag and everything. I think we should learn from our rural areas, which they are clean. So that now where we are living in these urban areas, we ensure that NEMA does its job, not another authority being created by a cabinet secretary, just a way of siphoning public funds. NEMA ought to look back and say, what is it that we can do to be able to perform our functions? This bill, Madam Speaker, is one of the worst bills I've ever seen in this parliament. And I hope that we can all become of age such that when we come and we introduce legislations in this parliament, we do away with this issue or this nonsense of creating authorities. In fact, this one is called a Waste Management Council. You give it such a beautiful name, and and you also now give the president the responsibility of appointing the chairperson of this council. And maybe even if you go to that chairperson's home, he or she will not even know how to manage the waste. So in summary, Madam Speaker, it behooves us, instead of coming up with legislations day in, day out, to ensure that we live in an environment which is clean, an environment which respects itself. Hypothetically, Madam Speaker, if we were to pass this legislation and we've not even dealt with the issue of dumping in this country, how are we going to solve our problems? Today, Madam Speaker, if KRA would listen, or if the Ministry of Treasury would also pay attention, there's absolutely no reason as to why we should reduce ourselves to be driving V8s, which are all mitumbas. Just because we've raised the taxes so much. In other countries which are doing well, you know, Kenyans who work in those countries drive new vehicles which are clean to the environment, which will help the environment, and at very little amount of money. But today, Madam Speaker, you go buy a vehicle which you would actually buy it used in America or in Japan for 300,000 Kenya shillings, but by the time it lands here, and remember, they are dumping. You'll end up paying 1.6 million shillings. Yet you talk about corruption. Where do you think corruption will ever end? Where do you think that person will get that 1 million on top to be able to pay? You drive that vehicle for about 2 months, it starts developing problems, polluting the environment. I wish I would have seen a provision in this bill that proposes 100% total ban in the importation of used vehicles, but instead lower the taxes of all brand new vehicles. But when the Cabinet Secretary, Munya, I believe, attempted to introduce certain provisions of reducing the number of years that an old vehicle can be allowed to be imported into this country, we politicians were up in arms, including unscrupulous businessmen who dwell in that business. Until he said, I'm not bothered. That if we were serious enough, that would be the first step that we'll take to make sure that we don't pollute this environment. That is issue number one. Number two, all these businesses, the Ministry of Health, through public health officers, should actually up their game. Go in, talk to the people, and say, hey, you know what? You cannot continue dumping or rather pouring toxic materials into the river because it affects people downstream. There are so many hotels built next to the river. But those hotels end up maybe doing their waste, human waste and everything, into the river. That's why Nairobi River is so filthy, although the late Michuki attempted to really do something to fix it. I always say the Ministry of Health, through the public officers, can do so much good for this country in improving sanitation. The Ministry of Environment, which I think has failed in performing its duties, would, if they were to up their game a little bit and care about the environment and not policy or boardroom meetings all the time, then we could be able to have a better country to live in. Number three, as I summarize, this issue of requiring county assemblies in this bill to come up with a plan for 5 years ought not to be reduced into legislation. It should be something where, at least when they are coming up with their budget and they are looking at their spatial plan to see where they are making their resources from, it is something which they should consider and say, when we are charging this license fee, X amount should go into the environment. And when it goes into environment, each county government should develop a very strong Department of Public Works, which deal with the issue of cleanness in those cities. It behooves us, Madam Speaker, as I finalize, to begin being clean ourselves. We start recycling all the waste in our homes. And then slowly by slowly, because we are the legislators, we work with the county assemblies to ensure that when they are passing their budget, there is a clear dump site which is known. And in that dump site, instead of now increasing politics, because ask Senator Mora here, Senator Mora could have a very good idea of making money, creating employment for Dandora dams. But the moment he set his foot there, I'm telling you, 1 million people will come up in arms and say, what are you doing? Because people make money, but they want to continue making money in a very dirty environment. Dandora would create 1 million jobs. Dandora would be able to put money into this economy. But now, it can't. Every town, every city, Narrow County being one of them, Madam Speaker, you will see that the dump site is right next to a river. And there are people living downstream. So we are not only cleaning the sewage and dumping the water into the river, but we are also dumping all toxic materials into that river. So, Madam Speaker, I will not support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Masitsa Naomi Chiyonga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me an opportunity to contribute on this bill. Madam Speaker, I'll start by saying that the author of this bill, or rather the originator of this bill, had a good mind of probably sustaining or working upon the waste management. However, the bill itself, the articles that are in this bill, if you read most of them, and I can quote, Madam Speaker, from, I don't know where I saw it, but I can check very fast. Article, is it 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9? They really contradict the whole issue on this bill. Especially, my colleagues have touched on the council, the authority, and all the authorities that are supposed to provide analytical report, the county government running the whole episode of collection and other function of waste management, the council creating jobs in the county government. Already, Madam Speaker, Kenya government is constrained in terms of budget. Even if we want to create jobs, let us look for a law that can create jobs, but that be sustainable and be of beneficial to Kenyans. Madam Speaker, in Kenyan Constitution 2010, under Article 42, guarantees the right to clean and healthy environment, which I totally agree. And it includes the right to environment and protect the future generation. Madam Speaker, it's important that when we get such a bills, we scrutinize them carefully, because there are some acts that are put in that actually contradict the whole thing, and then loses the whole essence of a bill being discussed here and passed, when actually it's going to erode the gain that we have made. Madam Speaker, sustainable waste management has been a challenge across all levels of the government, be it at the county government, but they are saying that most of the responsibilities goes to it through the county government, and the authority that they are mentioning here through the council that they want the PS or the CS to come up with. And looking at it, this piece of legislation, it is very important for us to make checks that such clauses be deleted completely, because they are just adding some more corruption avenues to the county government, which is already complaining about the budget, complaining about constraints on the workload that the county government already has. And we do not even have enough money in the government to run this government, even though we are adding and we are getting the budgets. But I don't think if this bill is really for the budget that already the county government are constrained with. Madam Speaker, I want also to say that increased level of production in agriculture and other sectors of the economy is usually accompanied by the result and waste that is not sustainable or sustainable at the level whereby result of good health hazards within our environment is managed. And we are really having a big problem when it comes to most of the estates that are coming up in the country, or they are mushrooming estates that are coming up in the government and even in our county government. And NEMA is already there. And I can say totally that NEMA has failed us, including me who is speaking here. When it comes to waste management, when it comes to air pollution, where I stay, we are always complaining about NEMA, which has policies that it cannot sustain, it cannot review, it cannot even list. When you go to NEMA, even right now, with a complaint of waste management or coming to assess the pollution, maybe in a certain estate, they do not have an answer. But rather, they want you to convince them. Why should we have authorities? Why should we have councils, in addition to NEMA, that we need to be convincing when actually their work is to work and act and sustain the waste management that is supposed to be their duty? Madam Speaker, I want to say that we have had cases where counties judge businesses and business operators for waste management without delivering the services. And that is there. They're just making money, booming businesses through the officers who are there. But we do not have, nobody can show you where this county government take the money that they collect on this. Instead, the county government, most of the county government come up with their own businesses, they become the owners of the businesses, and they collect money on behalf of the government or the county government, whereas the business is theirs. So why should we continue pumping money into these county governments or creating jobs to the county government just to continue with the corruption cases that we are trying to control and talk about in this assembly here or in this Senate here? Madam Speaker, with the advent of regional economic blocks, it is noteworthy that the bill provides the inter-county cooperation on waste management, which is a good thing. But again, let us look at it closely, that how are these economic blocks working even currently with the current status that they are in. So I just want to say that although the authorities are additional to what we have already had with NEMA, but I totally disagree that this bill, with what is the content that it has, the setup that it has, with additional jobs on the county government, we are just going to create more corruption, we are going to waste funds, and I think this bill, at my level, I feel we should fail it should go back, and we should not vote for it, because we are just going to waste resources, we are going to open avenues for corruption and nepotism when it comes to employment. Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my contribution.
Thank you.
I don't support.
Thank you, Senator Mwaura Isaac.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's quite interesting to see that we are discussing a bill about waste management. To begin with, I think it's good to accept that there is a problem of waste management in this country. And if you go to other jurisdictions, you see very clean cities. But if you want to know where somebody has come from, you just need to look at the dust on themselves, in their shoes, or even the vehicles that they are coming out of. And that's normal. I mean, if you just look at the vehicles coming from Kiambu, you can tell they've just come from Mashambani. It is anathema for this country to have clean places. Yet when we go abroad, we don't even remember when we last, brushed our shoes. I don't know. Just recently, I was coming from the airport, and when you just land in Kenya, you are taken by the litter around the green spaces in between the expressway, the highway, the Mombasa Road, and all of that, and the bypasses. And we seem to be quite accustomed to that. Waste management is secondary, but we know for sure that this is a lot of money. If it is well, anchored, there is very good technology to do so across the world. And remember, even seeing in other jurisdictions, how waste management would, just one person who is a driver and a truck would go around, homesteads and picking all the dirt. And from beans, and just organized, beans. This is for paper. This is for whatever organic waste and all of that. I think this is a topic that we need to discuss. Kenya was amongst the first countries to actually ban the use of single-use plastic papers, and it has made a lot of a difference, by the way. In fact, our country was more dirty when we had the single-use plastic around. It seems to have come back through the back door. I see them in the estates there. But largely, it being banned, it has reduced the waste that we see around. So I think the issue that I want to address, Madam Speaker, here is that, yes, there is agency in having a waste management bill, because then it needs to be regulated in terms of ensuring that then you define the parameters. So I disagree with my brother Ledama Olekina that this is one of the most useless bills. We have the powers as legislators to legislate on anything under the sun, as long as it is within the interest of the jurisdiction that is Kenya. So I think it's important that we debate it. But I also think this is a preserve of county governments, really. It's a bill concerning county. That is why it's found itself here. So these matters need to be legislated by county assemblers. They should be the ones who would be thinking of how best to manage waste. There are many good proposals. I think if it is even privatized, it has a higher rate of success. I have been approached, for example, personally, by people who would want, for example, to custom make waste management, factories in places like Kiambu, where I come from, and you find they are very good ideas. But then the challenge is, it becomes another money minting exercise. People do not want to sit down and just agree that they have good leadership that then would follow through these plans. And I wonder whether really, Madam Speaker, this is a largely oratorical question. I wonder whether we actually about 6 decades, by next year will be 6 decades since we got independence, whether we are heavily investing in good leadership that then would espouse such kind of ideas and see them through. Like you find progressive governors are unlikely to make it in these coming general elections, because maybe they don't play to the gallery, they are not out there politicking all the time. I know, and I don't want to mention names, but I bemoan the fact that those people who are usually focused and dedicated are dismissed as to being aloof and unreachable. I mean, all of us now are in the campaign mode, and I can see Mama Sigino, Senator Naomi Shionga, and I wish her well to become the women rep for Kakamega County. I know we are not in the same coalition, but as a good friend and a sister in Christ, I wish you well, that you may win that election. But you find that how many times can you receive people's phone calls? If you receive all phone calls that you get on your phone, then you will not be working. But that's a main complaint of constituents. They want you to receive all their calls and to answer to all their needs, and that would mean giving out handouts and such kind of things. So I have, from my own personal experience, I think we only need about 3 to 4 months of campaigning, and that is enough to produce the kind of leaders. But as long as we have robust laws that midwife such kind of leadership. So this bill, waste management, in spirit it is very good, but then it falls, when it is tested in terms of copy-pasting some kind of, mathematical formula, if I can call it that way, where the drafters have always been creating authorities and councils and agencies which have got a board, and this board is appointed by the appointing authority, in this case, in this new constitution, the president, or through the cabinet secretary, and those people do not really end up doing the work, because those appointments end up becoming political for many politicians or people who are politically correct. So they don't end up resolving the issue. And I had actually, Madam Speaker, in this parliament, I have proposed 9 new legislations. Today I saw an SMS asking us to come here for division. But you can see division is happening. You can see around. There is no way we are going to pass these laws because, we are short of quorum because everybody is trying to survive politically in one way or another. In fact, it has been documented that those who stay in this house when others are campaigning are unlikely to come back because they don't spend a lot of time looking for votes. But before we do sign a die, Madam Speaker, I really think we need to dissuade ourselves from this practice of creating too many semi-autonomous government agencies. Because what they do, Madam Speaker, is that they continue to siphon resources out of government. So it is important if then counties can create their own small agencies, and if it can also be a PPP kind of thing, where you actually partner, and then, because waste is money, it is financed by that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Remember sometimes back in one of the counties, I don't know that it was Meru, where a governor was accused of using 400 million shillings of buying dustbins. Certainly that's a lot of money. I wonder whether they were being put in people's homesteads, so that then you don't want to create a law that just creates a platform provides a platform for people to siphon out the much needed public monies in terms of development expenditure. And of course it will be recurrent, because then you have to keep on recycling waste every other day. So I think this bill is good. It may not be very timely because I don't see it seeing light of day, to be very sincere. Looking at the time that is remaining, I think in exactly about a month or so from now, we would be calling off the 12th Parliament. So I don't see it advancing further, but it's a good idea. It can be carried over to the next Parliament, Majority Leader, so that then it is fine-tuned. But we need to think on how we are going to recreate the model of making bills in this country, so that those bills are not just, copy-pasted. One of the bills that I was bringing to the House, out of my 9 bills, was a sunset bill. The sunset bill, the aim has been to put a definite timeline on how long a state agency must exist. And it has been documented that you only need about 20 years to resolve a problem. So that then you retire such bills. After 20 years, maybe after 10 years, such agencies can come for review, but only to see the progress made, so that then after 20 years you do away with those many agencies. There are about 247. And so this would be another extra one. And of course, it would be very popular if it was created, because if you have made the the chairman of the Waste Management Council at the national level, then you can as well get kickbacks from all of the people who want to get licenses to go and do what they need to do. It's big business, it's big money. But that's not the idea we want to have. So in terms of progressive thinking, I think we need to relook at this bill and also ensure that we add value to it. That is why we, the Senate, are essentially a house of revision, so that then we don't just throw the baby with the bathwater. So otherwise, I think a lot has been canvassed, and I hope that then in the new format of the bill, it will not just be an overarching enabling legislation, but then you custom make, or rather you delegate the legislative power to the county assemblies, so that each one of them would get a bigger picture from the mother bill, but then they custom make it to suit their needs. Why? Because even a very good example was given just now on the floor of the House, that where counties don't have a lot of waste, maybe there's a limited development. So then you don't want to say the same for every other county. But it also means, Nakuru, just the other day, was to be a very clean city. Very, very clean. You would be happy to be Nakuru. But because of the exponential growth of Nakuru, as one of our 5 cities, including Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, and now Nakuru, it has become very dirty. It has become very chaotic. It speaks, of course, waste management cannot be removed from city planning, physical planning. So again, that also is very, very important, because it's not just a question of this bottle of sanitizers that are all over here, but also in terms of stormwater. How does it go all the way? How does it clog our streets? How does it make it, because it's part of waste and all of the garbage that it carries with it. So I think it is a very holistic thing, but it needs to be structured in such a manner that we localize it to make it more amenable to what will be important in a certain locality. So I think, Madam Speaker, with those many comments, I would want to say I support the bill, but with amendments. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Senators, that was the last contribution, so I would now like to ask the mover to respond. Senator Pokisho.
Madam Speaker, I beg to reply. Madam Speaker, this has been a very interesting afternoon. The bill which we have been canvassing here is the Waste Management Bill. It's a National Assembly bill, Madam Speaker, and as I said before, passed by the National Assembly. But now here, this afternoon, Madam Speaker, has found a very robust debate in the Senate. Very robust, and I'd like to thank the members who have contributed. Some of them are not very comfortable with it, a good number of them very comfortable, but there are definitely some work to be done on it. But Madam Speaker, I just want to ask that the members realize that this is very practical, applicable to your counties, applicable to our devolved units. It is the place where we suffer for lack of proper management of our waste. And so, I agree with Senator Mwaura, who basically says, yes, it's a good bill, it's very progressive, but we might have to put it in a different format. And that's, of course, for every bill that we have, Madam Speaker, we have a stage at which we can bring in those amendments. And I'd like to encourage that we make a bill better, definitely by enhancing it through amendments. And so I want to say that because, Madam Speaker, that is of the circumstance of the day, and members being away, I would like, Madam Speaker, to move and ask that, pursuant to Standing Order 61(3), the putting of the question be put to, the question be put on another day. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I beg to reply.
Thank you, Leader of Majority. The vote is therefore deferred to a later date. The division will be at a later date. Honorable Senators, I would like to now go back to order number 8 and defer orders number 8 to order number 24 for the convenience of the House. Further, honorable senators, order number 26 and 27 were supposed to be moved by Senator Judith Pareno, who had informed us that tomorrow would be more convenient for her. So orders 26 and 24 and 26 and 27 are deferred for that reason. Honorable senators, the next two are Committee of the Whole, orders 28 and 29. The two are therefore also deferred for the convenience of the House. Honorable senators, there being no other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 11th May 2022 at 2:30 p.m.
Zile kazi bwana niachie mimi, mtoto anukia marashi